Hi friends, Krista here. Thanks for stopping by Books and Jams. Today, I am going to be wrapping up my 5-star predictions with Booklist Thursday. My friends Sarah and Lindsey do Booklist Thursday every Thursday, coming to you with a list or some sort of bookish conversation. And quarterly, I think, they do 5-star prediction videos, and they include other booktubers, and this time they included me because this time we did our Christmas book exchange books as our 5-star predictions. So I read the 3 books that I was gifted by my booktube besties: Havah by Tosca Lee, The British Booksellers by Christy Cameron, and The Last Love Note by Emma Gray. And I'm here today to tell you if these were 5-star or not. Here we go. I'm going to do them in the order that I read them, which means I'm starting with The Last Love Note by Emma Gray. And I'm pleased to say that this was a 5-star read for me. I absolutely loved this story of Kate working through the grief, really, of losing her husband. Her husband passed away 2 years ago at the time of this story. And it was a rough way to lose him. He had early onset Alzheimer's, so it just was a very difficult time in her life as he was losing his memories. Yeah, it was just a really tough experience to walk through. And so now 2 years later, she's a single mom and still in the midst of all of this grief. I would say that the working through the grief is the main part of the story. There is a romance in here as well. And I loved all of it. I love books that deal with grief and working through grief, and everybody does it differently. There were moments of humor and levity that were needed because it was so heavy. Her boss, Hugh, was phenomenal. He just was such a good friend, both to her husband, Cameron, and to her. It was just an important story of learning that losing someone and holding on to that love of somebody that you lost doesn't mean that you can't love again. There are some funny moments. The side characters are, I love her friend that helps out and kind of pushes her and encourages her. I love the boss, like I said, Hugh, and the hunky neighbor next door. I was worried at the very beginning it was going to be a love triangle, but we did not go in that direction, so I was pleased about that. Yeah, I just read this in about a day and a half and couldn't put it down, and it absolutely was a 5-star read for me. So loved The Last Love Note. The next one that I picked up was a historical fiction, The British Booksellers by Christy Cameron. This one I ended up giving 4 stars to. I really enjoyed it. We are in 2 different timelines: World War I, or just before World War I, and then World War I, and then right in the midst of World War II. We follow our 2 main characters pictured on the cover here, Amos and Charlotte. And in the past timeline, Amos is a tenant farmer's son and Charlotte is the landowner's daughter. So they are really, really good friends, turned like young love, and are kind of split apart by circumstances. Charlotte's family marries her off basically to an earl's son, and their lives just kind of take different directions. And then in the World War II timeline, Charlotte is a single mom. Her husband died during the war, and she is running a bookshop on the same street where Amos is running a bookshop, and they have kind of an antagonistic relationship, rivalry going on. You can see that there's a lot more under the surface between them, but there is kind of this rivals situation turned into second chance love story. At times it felt a little bit slower, and at times it felt a little confusing. We had so many different points of view. So there's past Amos and present Amos, past Charlotte and present Charlotte. And then we also get a perspective POV from Charlotte's daughter, Eden. So there was a lot of jumping around in timelines, a lot of other characters involved, but I enjoyed learning about the Blitz that happened in Coventry, as like usually we hear about the London Blitz during World War II. I loved watching Amos and Charlotte kind of come back together, finally start talking with each other, working things out. I enjoyed all of that. This is a Christian fiction, but there isn't really faith content in here. It doesn't really talk about their relationship with God at all. They do have to kind of come to grips with the past and work through some things, but it's not done with God in mind, really. I would say that it's a very clean historical fiction. There's not any language or violence or sex or anything like that in here. So it's a pretty straightforward story, and I gave it 4 stars. I did really enjoy it, and I would recommend it to those who like this kind of a story. So 4 stars. good read, but not quite a 5-star for me. The final book that I read was Havah by Tosca Lee, and I just read this month in February. I talked about it slightly in my mid-month wrap-up, and I have a hard time rating this because I do think this is one that's going to stick with me and that I'm going to continue to think about as the months go on. However, I didn't love the writing style at the beginning of this. I think I got into it more once they left the Garden of Eden. So this is a biblical fiction retelling kind of the story of Eve. So Adam and Eve, Garden of Eden, paradise, and then they eat the fruit, give in to the temptation of Satan, and are evicted basically from the garden and can never return. And it was very interesting to think about Adam and Eve as human beings, as people, what that must have been like to be in paradise and then get kicked out and have to live in struggle and toil and sin ultimately for the rest of their lives, and what that must have been like and felt like. And they're the parents of humanity. So first children and first families and all of that growing and developing. Like, it was interesting to read all of that for sure. The very beginning part, Eve has dreams of creation, which is how they learn about how everything was created. And the whole in the garden language and writing style was a lot more flowery and descriptive and lush and vocabulary that I just didn't think was necessary. I just don't love that incredibly flowery writing in general. I have a harder time with it. I have to think about, what are you actually saying here? Because it was just, she was just writing in this way that was just very descriptive. I don't know how else to describe it. I'm clearly not a person who talks with that kind of language. Like, it was too overly flowery for me and not my favorite. So I'm giving this 4.5. I feel like I'm going to round it up to 5 on Goodreads, because ultimately that was just a little bit at the beginning and I really did connect with the rest of it. I loved how there was such a difference even in Adam and Eve's relationship from in the garden, where everything was perfect and beautiful and they were really one with each other, almost to the point where they knew where each other was in the garden and they could almost read each other's minds, and they were so connected with all of the animals and knew what they were thinking and feeling. Not in a woo-woo kind of weird way, just everything was perfect. And then being outside of the garden, where sin has now entered the world, they are struggling with each other. Their own insecurities come out and they're questioning the other person's motives and not able to really not read their mind, but know what they're thinking anymore, and feeling betrayed, feeling left behind, left out. And it felt so real to human interaction when we don't really know what other people are thinking and feeling and doing. And so we question ourselves and we question them. And it felt there was struggles in Adam and Eve's marriage that just felt realistic and sad, but that's what sin does ultimately. And I just thought that was really good. I loved the Cain and Abel story that we get in here, where God accepts Abel's sacrifice and not Cain's, and how that was all played out and how they might have felt about all of that. It was just it was so good. I really loved this. I love Tosca Lee, and I really loved the author's note where Tosca kind of talks about all the questions that she had about, she just started writing out questions about the beginning of the world and what would this have been like and what was that like. And this book kind of is her attempt to imagine the answers of some of those. We can never fully know, honestly, but it was her attempt to kind of answer some of those questions in a way that might have been possible. So yeah, I really enjoyed this. I'm going to give it 4.5 stars. That is that. Overall, I'm number one, thrilled that I read all 3 of my Christmas Book Exchange books from 2024 already. They're done. They don't have to go on my Christmas Book Exchange cart. They can go on my finished shelves. I love that I got them done so quickly. And I did really good. A 5-star, a 4-star, and a 4.5 star. Very, very thrilled with that outcome. Thank you so much, Amanda and Lindsey and Sarah, for being my besties and for our little book exchange that we do every year. I love, love, love you gals, and I loved these books. So that is it. Please stop over to Sarah and Lindsey's channels today. They will also be wrapping up their Christmas book exchange books from this past Christmas and see if the books I gave them were 5 stars or not. I don't know. Oh, I should say this one came from Sarah, this one came from Lindsey, and this one came from Amanda. Thanks, ladies. And thanks, Sarah and Lindsey, for including me in this Booklist Thursday round of 5-star predictions. I appreciate being included. I love you gals. And that's going to be it for me today. I would love to know if you've read any of these. Did you think the same or similarly to me or differently than me? I would love to hear that in the comments down below. And if you've made it to the end of this and you don't really have a comment to leave, but you want to let me know that you were here, put some kind of a fruit emoji in the comments. I appreciate you all for taking a few minutes of your day to spend with me today and for any interaction we get in the comments. I love it so much. And I look forward to talking with you in another video very soon. Bye.